All right, we're moving on to quads, and you know, it's really a matter of how you feel, what your favorite machine is, what doesn't hurt. Especially me, I'm 54 now, so I don't do anything that hurts. But strength is specific, so if you're a power lifter and you're intending on building up your squat, you want to use a variation of the squat with some of those movements that we just talked about. But jumping on a hack squat or a leg press is fantastic for hypertrophy. A bigger muscle can become a stronger muscle. Though once you have the size, you're going to want to have some specificity in order to increase the squat. And so we're just going to hit, this is a fantastic machine. We've seen a lot of guys come out here and really kill it on this machine. So we're going to jump on this one. It feels good. We warmed up with it. Everything feels great. The big thing for hypertrophy, again, range of motion, particularly at the knee. You get a lot of range of motion at the hip. That's not going to build a whole lot of quad mass. So we want to get a lot of range of motion at the knee. And so we'll at least work our way up that way. It might not be your strongest at the knee. We might adjust our stance and load the hips to put some plates on here to see what we can do. But this is where we're going to start today, and then we'll talk about a specific exercise for squat next.
I've been thinking about it more and more. I do want to because it would serve.
This is so big and almost easier.
I would gladly.
And the coolest part, well, even this, like you can adjust the angle here too.
So what do you recommend? What do you think?
Yes, buy one.
Well, no, I mean, what do you think? Like, yeah, no, I think we will.
I think you're there, right? Stan had a good point, making sure that you have that knee flexion. That's what you're looking for.
Well, it's funny because, you know, like Jason, my biggest lifting was probably late 90s, early 2000s. You know, I've competed all the way up to recently, but started in gear. So, you know, you go to West Side and they're like, throw a suit on.
Yeah.
And I think, in hindsight, I wish I had done, because when I started out, I met Louis when I was 18. There's such an emphasis like posterior chain. Quads are terrible. And we never train quads, maybe some belt squats here and there, but even back then I remember doing a ton of belt squats. I think that was great advice for most lifters, but as a beginner, I think there's a lot of value in doing really like what Stan said, making everything strong.
Yeah.
And I remember when I met Louis, I'd qualified junior nationals as an Olympic weightlifter, and I went back and did some front squats like a year later, and I was so weak. I gained 20 pounds. My front squats were terrible. So I think if I were going to do my lifting over, and what we do with our young lifters is definitely work your quads. And I think machines like this are great because I always say this, a lot of powerlifters are leaners, myself included. Jason's got one of the best squats I've ever seen aesthetically. What'd you squat in high school?
6'10",
Yeah,
6'05".
me too.
Jason's got like a proclivity, but Jason, if you look at his massive 30-inch quads, right?
What? Yeah, we're.
And how often do you do legs?
I mean, there's been multiple powerlifting meets where I've done no direct leg day.
So if you're blessed with legs like that, that's great. And Jason squats straight up and down and never loses his posture. But if you don't have that, you know, like, would you say you were 135 pounds? If you don't do all this, your legs get skinny, don't they?
Yeah.
So I think you can leverage a barbell. This is a great, I love the hack squat even maybe more than the leg press, because there's nowhere to go. You have to use your quads.
Right.
And I think it really helped a lot of our guys were all squats.
And it's great, like you said, it puts you in the position that you need to be in. You just hold on tight and just do the work, right?
Yeah.
Especially for younger lifters, it's like you need to build the muscle, you need to build some mass, you need to get bigger so you can get stronger and then kind of produce that.
I think too, for that becoming lifter, these are good tools, like serious accessory movements where you learn how to work hard, where the margin of error is huge. The margin of error is very tiny on a 1 rep max.
Yeah.
So this is the place where a young lifter comes and says, you know, it's like, okay, we're doing 6 sets of 15 and every set's going to be a 10 RPE. This is where a young lifter really learns how to grind. And then they're just learning how to lift with a barbell lift.
Well, right, the skill versus actual an output, right?
Stan and I are actually working on a attachment for belt squats, because the same thing you see in the belt squats, everybody comes down and then they, you know, pop their hips up. And so they're really not working their legs that much. They're just leveraging their hips.
Right.
And that's what some coaches teach, but the problem is you're never really working your quads. So I have little girly legs, sadly. And do hams all day, but these ones will challenge me. So Stan, you like I learned a lot of this from Stan in the bodybuilding stuff. You like that big stretch at the bottom, hold it, and then kind of squeeze out of the bottom. These ones are great. This also gets a lot of glute, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
You in there, Jason?
Yeah.
I like to use a little of the John Perillo approach. You kind of pull yourself down, keep a lot of tension on it. See, Jason's got huge legs and doesn't really do a lot of. Jason's up to a 780 raw squat in competition, squat 800 in the gym, but he figured out, smartly, he said, my legs are plenty big. He started working his upper back a lot harder for his squat. Conversely, we had a kid who was stuck at a 530 squat forever. And
Bigger wheels.
he had a real big legs. He actually could out leg press me. I squat 630 raw. He squats 530 raw. One day I said, maybe you don't need to leg press more. A lot of times we do what we want to do,
not
not what we need to do.
Right.
Yeah. That's an important point. Anytime you implement an accessory exercise or a variation of your powerlifting movement, you got to go back 3 weeks later and test and see, does that transfer over? If not, throw it out, find a different accessory, because the goal of it isn't just exercise, it's training, and you're supposed to be able to build that squat if that's your sport.
100%.
I've talked quite a bit in the past about I had suffered for probably 10 years with chronic tendonitis and pain in my knees to the point where I thought I wasn't going to be able to powerlift anymore. And so I put out this video called Keys to Pain-Free Knees. And really all it said, and kind of the major components of improving your knees, is to eliminate the source of the problem. And by eliminate the source, it might mean that you just go a little lighter and shorten the range of motion. But you want to continue to move. Number one, eliminate the source. Number two, find pain-free movements. And number three, move early and often. And a lot of you guys saw me use the leg press with bands on them so that I was deloading when I was at full stretch. When the knee was in its most exposed position, the weight was the lightest. That was fantastic for helping repair my knees while still getting enough load, so I maintained quad mass during that time period. I also did the 3 10-minute walks or recumbent bikes, again, walking in backwards on a 15-degree treadmill. All those things puts blood into the knees, and I did it frequently. I would do it at least 3 times a day. Something I'd implemented back in 2009 to help recover from my heavy squat sessions was, rather than just sitting around like I tried to do initially and had a hard time recovering and had a lot of delayed onset muscle soreness, I started 3 times a day riding a recumbent bike for just 10 minutes, maybe a little HIIT session under modest load, 40, 45 seconds, 10, 15-second rest. Do it again 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Following the meal, you've heard me talk about the benefits of that for digestion and blood sugar. But it really helped the knees. One thing I did notice, though, is after the knees were healthy, I kept the bands on there. And so I was deloading at the most important position, at full stretch. And so I did not see a significant hypertrophy benefit once I was healed. So I think that's a good intervention for pain, but you got to pop those bands off and start trying to load where you have the most hypertrophy result, which again is full range of motion.
Yeah. We talk about this in one of our books, that your training is constantly evolving. What you start out as like a 15-year-old kid is going to be completely different as a 54-year-old lifter, and you're going to go through, everything works, but nothing works forever. You're going to go through evolution of training and I think that's what's funny for Jason particularly, and Stan too. Jason probably does how many sessions a week do you do?
About 110 sessions a week.
Jason's
110 personal training sessions with clients a week, Jason does.
And so we're pretty, he's done that for 15 years, and we're really, just like a lot of the people watching at home, very into watching all this stuff that's out there. And what's funny is nothing's new. And you can watch the guys online who, they're like, all you gotta do is squat, deadlift, and bench. And then they start getting hurt, and they're like, well, we added a safety bar, or we added this, and then suddenly you see them on
variations come out.
10 years later, you see them on a hack squat, you know.
Yeah.
And it's just, everybody goes through this kind of evolution, it's like, well, all you got to do is add 5 pounds a week. A young guy starts lifting. It's like, well, let me know when you stop, and then they stop, and they plateau, and then they get hurt. And so what Stan's talking about is just the evolution of training that's always going, and you got to be mindful of it. And then that's why we track everything.
Yeah.
And I think it's really kind of important to see for especially people watching this is we wanted to do this style of video because of the decision-making process you guys have in between the exercises, the conversations that you have. It's like everything is always being monitored. Everything is always kind of being like going back and forth. It's like, how does this feel? How does this feel? Right? And I think that's super important that people see is like, that's really what training is.
Right. All you see on Instagram, of course, is the max loads.
Right.
That's good for social media. But behind the scenes, in order to be able to do those max loads, there's obviously a lot more thought that goes into it, a lot more recovery, a lot more volume. It can't all be heavy. So we talked about hooking up bands. There's a couple different ways to do it. Matt could describe this, but when I was doing banded work for hypertrophy, or what I presumed was going to be hypertrophy, and to unload the knees, I was hooking the bands up down here and around the weight here. So the top portion of the movement, I could load more and more and more band weight up there, so I get heavier and heavier and heavier at the top. And I got a great pump from that. But when we're training athletes, we'll hook the bands from the top around here because in terms of the stimulus fatigue ratio, we want to decrease acceleration as the weight approaches you. We don't want it to approach you fast like it would if the bands are hooked here to here. When you break the knees, this weight's going to be accelerating into you very fast. We want to unload that acceleration for that fatigue to stimulus ratio.
And kind of like the talk about, somebody said you never know you're strong till you compete. If for an athlete, like in our case with John Jones, if he goes and loses and it's like, yeah, but his quads were wrecked the other day, or he had a big bench, it's irrelevant. You don't get any points for that. So to Stan's point, making the training to some extent easier or more friendly is a good thing. So it just comes to, there's not one method. Understanding, like Stan said, why would you put it from the bottom or why would you put it from the top? They're both right, just in this right circumstance.
Yeah, we don't want to bring him into a wrestling practice or a Muay Thai practice wrecked, so he's so fatigued he can't even lift his leg up. That's not our goal.
That's our goal for us. You gonna triple? Plates?
I'll work up a bit. I don't know if I'll get that far. The lower I bring my legs, the more I feel a little bit of knee pointer. So that's why I'm bringing my feet up high today. It's funny. Every machine's different. You just got to feel it out.
Well, and then like anthropology's big. Like Stan's got really big, wide hips. Even though, like Stan, you always talk about how you were a small guy growing up. You really aren't. You got wide hips, wide shoulders.
Yeah.
You're just lean, probably.
Lots of squatting and deadlifting. Well, even when I was 140 pounds,
but you had wide hips.
My hips were pretty wide. I never had a small waist.
Yeah, and you look at the best squatters like Chuck Vogel pulls that way, Phil Harrington, Eddie Cohen's real thick in his thick hips, Jason's big thick hips. And for the little Irish guys like me, we gotta build them up.
Yeah.
Preach.
Yeah. Sam knows.
Yeah.
Nice, Matt.
So for quads, I actually like a little higher rep range like that. That's pretty hard for me.
Now, in programming these for clients or for athletes, where do you kind of fall for rep ranges?
I like for quads, I've always found 15 to 20. You're trying to get bigger. I try to keep the correct tools. Like, so I'm probably not going to do a triple on this. I like to really get a big pump. It's restorative, kind of serves its purpose.
Yep.
I leave the, like I said, I like hip hinges. I like higher or lower rep ranges, heavier weight. So for clients, it's kind of the same thing. I feel like high reps for the quads seem to work best. And again, like it's an accessory, so you know there's no points for this.
Yeah.
You know, it's just an accessory.
It's another one too where you could always do more. A common way that I'll apply this with someone is if I'm going serious on leg press, we might do a 10 rep max with a pause in the hole, and then a couple back down sets where we remove the pause and do an AMRAP set. And then we might say, okay, do a 10 rep max pause. Now we're going to wipe the pause out, and we're going to accumulate, depending on what my volume goals are for the day for that person. We're going to accumulate 75. You rest when you need to, but no pause. I think for
You can't get off the machine until you get to 75.
people at a lower training age, they struggle with how to push themselves. So when you program something like do 5 sets of 12, whether they do 5 sets of 12 or 4 sets of 15, who cares? They're learning how to work hard just as much as they're making tissue changes, and that's important. And particularly when you have a client, you can't just cuss in their face that they're being a wimp. You need to give them a little bit of a margin of error, like, hey, you want to rack it? Fine, but you're doing the volume that I want you to get done for the day.
The other thing is I think a time component's real big. I think, like Stan talked about, I always said Stan's best meet to me is when you came off bodybuilding. Would you agree, Stan?
Yeah, that's what we talked about earlier in terms of I had the most volume accumulated when I was doing bodybuilding and then transferred to powerlifting.
You said a big component of your bodybuilding training was your rest periods, timing them.
Yeah.
I think, you know, right now we're talking a little bit for filming, but Stan and Jason know for training with me, not that the end all be all, but we go. It's like, you know, kind of pushing the next guy off the, like, you know, if we weren't talking, I'd be like, all right, you're off, go.
What does hypertrophy science tell us? Tell us that like to see about a 2 to 3 minute rest period, and that would be for the larger body parts, of course, and whether it's a multi-joint movement or a single joint movement, but that's kind of nice. If you're doing 30-second, 1 minute rest times, that's probably more endurance and stamina than it is actually for hypertrophy. Also, in terms of the rep ranges, you can get just as big a muscles training at 85% of your 1 rep max doing a 5 rep set as you can doing 70% of your 1 rep max doing a 10 to 15 rep set, or 60 or 50 or 40% of your 1 rep max doing 20 or 25 reps, so long as you get to within a rep or two of failure. That's the key component. But there's less accumulated fatigue from that mid-range, somewhere in that 10 to 15 rep range that Matt talked about. And since volume is a pretty important driver of hypertrophy, if you've got a lot of fatigue and a lot of delayed onset muscle soreness, then it prevents you from accumulating a weekly volume, a higher weekly volume, then that may be detrimental. And so we might do a couple of top heavy sets of 5 and finish with an AMRAP once a week. That the other workout would be, you know, mostly in your 12 to 15 rep range.
The other thing I always think is, research has shown, if you get shorter rest periods, you have to stimulate new fiber. So
satellite cell proliferation. Yeah. And also, a muscle cell isn't all just muscle fiber. There's the sarcoplasm. So you actually, when they talk about the pump, a lot of that, almost 20% of the size of the cell will be fluid. And which is kind of why I like carbohydrates and salt, because that accumulates more fluid inside the cell. But just the cells pressing against each other with that pump actually stimulates a hypertrophy benefit, some growth from that. Yeah. So it might not be, you know, optimal for strength gains. It's not actually contractile tissue, but it looks good in the mirror. Let's not say that.
The other thing too is you got training density, because Stan talked about, you know, you only have so much physical capital, you only have so much mental capital too.
That's true.
So if you can, you know, when we do 15 to 30 sets in an hour.
Yeah.
On some of our workouts, some of our leg workouts when I was out in Vegas, really pushing it. I mean, that's so much better than if you sit around.
Right.
I've been with guys where I can't train with them because you're getting like 4 sets and an hour's going by, and there's a mental capacity too. How long are we going to focus on this?
I got to tell you a story about that.
Oh no.
Nice.
Hapish. Hey. Hapish.
Still feels good. Enjoy this? We'll take one off.
Yeah, I'll tell that story real quick. In terms of rest periods. Most of y'all powerlifters probably know Micah Marino. He's a fantastic powerlifter. He pulled damn near 800 at 176 pounds or something crazy like that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, incredible powerlifter out of Las Vegas.
He pulled that in Miami, did he?
I think so. When the gyms closed down, he's out of Vegas. I had my little garage gym set up, had a bunch of Elite FTS equipment in there. Thank you guys very much. And so all the guys came over and trained in my garage that summer. And so Micah would come over with his team, and they would train for like 4 hours. And Micah, I came out of the house. I was headed to Costco. See if I can give you the Reader's Digest version of this story. And he pulled 725. And I was walking out to get in the car, and he's like, Stan, did you see that? And I'm like, no, I missed it. He goes, I pulled 725. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. He goes, I think I'm going to go up to 765. I get in the car, I drive to Costco, I go grocery shopping, I come back, he was just getting ready to do his 765. And that was probably 40 minutes that trip must have taken.
That's funny.
That's a quick Costco trip.
That is.
Stan's got VIP at Costco.
Yes, indeed.
Like paralysis through analysis, you got 40 places to put your feet.
I like it though.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. This thing gets heavy quick. You notice that? Because of the angle of the machine. That brings me to another story. We get full of stories today. So years ago, remember when Ronnie Coleman had that huge leg press?
Yeah.
And it was like 2,100 or 2,200 or 2,300 pound. I don't know what it was. He went in there one day.
Lightweight, whatever it was.
It was a lot. It was whatever it was. It was just a peanut, but it was a lot of peanuts. And so I watched that video, and this is when I was in my prime of powerlifting in my early 40s, I think, when the video came out, almost 10 years ago. And so I was like, damn, I've never come anywhere close to that. I thought that was incredible. And it was mind-boggling to me because I kind of fashioned Ronnie's strength, to be somewhat similar on most of those movements. And so I screenshot the video and blew it up and tried to find the name of the piece of equipment that he had got. Then I looked at the manufacturing specs and found out the angle. And it turns out it's a 22.5 degree or 23 degree as opposed to a 45. This is a really high degree. Your leg press is the same way. Your leg press is a real high angle, and obviously that's going to influence the amount of weight you can use. So that wasn't enough. I didn't pacify myself just with the knowledge that the angle was not as steep as what I'm used to. So I get a plane ticket and I fly all the way out from Seattle to Metroflex Gym in Arlington, and I think Brian, the owner there, had a roasted pig on the counter. No plates, no utensils, just a roasted pig. He's like, help yourself. And so people were coming up and just like tearing off chunks of roasted pig, because he does pig hunting down there or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so I went down there just to use the leg press, so I could see if I could match Ronnie Coleman. I even brought knee wraps because he used knee wraps, and so I was like, I'm not going to be at a disadvantage here. But I got to be honest, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. Yeah, I got up to I think 2,100 pounds, and I think he was at 22 or 23 on that lift. I'd have to pull up the old video because it's that took lots of counseling to get over that moment. But the angle matters. Let's just say. So every time we add a plate, this thing gets really heavy really quick because we got a pretty high angle on this.
At least you got a palm full of pig out of it. Okay.
Yes, indeed.
What are you going to work up to here? What's your plan?
I don't know, because the 3 started to get heavy, so I might just end up here. We'll see what happens. Powerlifters are a shallow bunch at the end of the day. Our egos get the best of us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Nice.
set?
Oh, it's my set. You already went?
Yes, whatever you want.
All right.
Well, Jimmy,
I need to tell a couple more stories to get my rest periods up.
It's the time I worked at my
I might
mom's
have to go to the bathroom or something.
My mom, say about my mom's bakery.
Yep. Hey.
Go, Steve. Warm it up. Nice.
Come on, Stan.